I remember once interviewing Dr. Kabiru Adamu, and Dr. Kabiru Adamu, who is one of our experts, not just in Nigeria, not just across north of Nigeria, African terrorism security experts. He said to me, we have 80 anti-state terror groups active in Nigeria. Those are some of the facts that are rarely ever reported.
Right now, what we see is that bandits and also a number of jihadist groups that have also come from the Sahel region are also operating within the northwest region, thereby complicating the crisis itself.
More and more parents who were not very willing to send their children to school are now the ones who, after they have decided to send their children to school in the northeastern part of the country, are experiencing this kind of challenge where their children are picked up and they have no idea regarding when those children are going to come back home.
Hello and welcome to Channel Africa Conversations. I'm your host, Peter Ndoro. Now, in today's episode, Nigeria is facing a deepening kidnapping crisis that's disrupting schools, churches, highways and rural communities, driven by armed gangs, extremist elements and weak state security. In Kebbi, 24 abducted schoolgirls were recently released, whilst in Niger State, hundreds of students and teachers from St. Mary's Catholic School remain missing. Similar attacks in Kwara and Kaduna and Borno have left families living in fear. Now, these kidnappings are no longer isolated. They are systemic, crippling education, displacing farmers, breaking communities and pushing families into poverty and trauma. The UN is warning that millions could face hunger as schools shut down and villages are abandoned. So the big question then must be, what do these kidnappers and kidnappings reveal about Nigeria's security breakdown, and how are they reshaping education, governance, media reporting and daily life? Well, to unpack this, we are joined by Ereti Bakare Yusuf, a broadcast journalist and host of Borderlines on Nigeria Info, Dr. Peter Ogodoro, an education researcher and leader of the Nigeria Teachers Community, and Dr. Christian Ani, project coordinator at the Institute for Security Studies. To all of you, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Channel Africa Conversations. Welcome.
Hello.
Good to have you all on board. Let me start with you, perhaps, Dr. Ani. These recent kidnappings, what do they tell us about the nature of the insecurity in northern and central Nigeria? Are we dealing with simple ransom-driven crime, or is there something more complex going on?
Yeah, so I'd like to begin with noting that the security context of Nigeria is very complex and challenging at the moment, because we have a mix of violent extremist groups that are operating, within the region, and then we also have bandits, and then also the Fulani headsmen that have also been implicated in a number of, both kidnappings and violence. So what we are seeing here is a conglomeration of various forms of illicit activities by various non-state actors. First, we have, as you know, the Boko Haram crisis have been ongoing in the northeastern Nigeria for a very long period of time, and they have been involved in a lot of kidnappings. Right now, what we see is that bandits and also a number of jihadist groups that have also come from the Sahel region are also operating within the northwest region, thereby complicating the crisis itself. We have reports that JNIM have also carried out attacks in places like Kwara, for instance. We also have reports of Lakurawa group, a new jihadist movement also operating, whether it's around the Sokoto area. So it's a whole lot of challenges that we are facing, that it's not reduced to one form of violence, but a number of violent extremism, including with banditry, and then also the headsmen. I must say, when I say Fulani headsmen, I think it's very important not to say the whole Fulanis, but there are very specific criminal element, within them that are disgruntled and they have metamorphosed into, using, being involved in a lot of crime activities, not just only in the northern area, but across Nigeria as well. So it's very important to put that nuance right there. Thank you.
All right, let me turn to you, Dr. Ogudoro. Education is what you focus on quite a lot, and a lot of these abductions are happening at schools in particular. Has this changed parents' willingness to send their children back to school, especially girl children who've always faced challenges in terms of getting an education?
Yeah, certainly, especially in the northern part of the country. Not much has changed in the southern part of the country because historically, the South has always taken some steps, ahead of the North, and it's very unfortunate that we are where we are now because we have been trying to see if we can get that gap to be closed, through ensuring that our children remain in school uninterruptedly. But that is where we are. More and more parents who were not very willing to send their children to school are now the ones who, after they have decided to send their children to school in the northeastern part of the country, are experiencing this kind of challenge where their children are picked up and they have no idea regarding when those children are going to come back home. So it's blackmailing education and making it look like it is not, schools are not the right places to be and to go to. But we know that education remains the bedrock of development, and we must, as a government, as a society, urgently find ways to ensure that we don't continue to keep our children away from schools, because if we remain where we are, then Nigeria's future becomes very compromised.
Ms. Bakare Yusuf, as a journalist, what are the challenges that journalists are facing in reporting these kidnappings? I guess there's got to be a responsible way of doing it without spreading panic, perhaps, and maybe even unintentionally helping kidnappers.
That's a good question. I have to go back to what Christian said. The question you asked him was most pertinent. And I think as journalists, as media, when we talk about this current plague in our society, in our country, indeed, we have to talk about it from the point of view that all the issues do not, albeit they're all violent issues, are not the same. So we have different groups who have different ideologies, who demand different things. It's our responsibility as journalists to put that there. So sometimes people will say terrorists instead of bandits. Sometimes they will say Fulani herdsmen. Unlike Christian, who actually said, when we say Fulani herdsmen, we do not mean all Fulanis. In fact, I'm a journalist. I don't even like, I shy away from ethnicizing any kind of crime. Albeit we do know that these herdsmen are Fulanis, because once you start ethnicizing a crime, then you start to other people who are part of Nigeria as a whole. And we forget the fact that indeed on our borders in West Africa, the Fulani tribe is actually makes it spread all across. So and we do know that we have international actors who are also actually, I'm not quite sure what happened there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You can carry on.
Yes. So as I was saying, so one of the other things we have, like I said, we have Fulanis all across West Africa. They're spread. They're transhumanist people, right? They don't stay in one place. But we know that we have Nigerian Fulanis and we have non-Nigerian Fulanis. Indeed, what most people don't know is that there are different ethnic groups, even within Fulani itself. So when they say Fulani herdsmen, it almost imply, that's why I was really happy when Christian said, no, not all Fulanis. That's one. As journalists, we also must be clear that there is banditry, which is basic criminality, stealing, kidnapping, etc., for money. Indeed, those who are going into the mines in Nigeria and stealing our natural resources, they are part of this banditry. Then you have those who are international terrorists, who have found a way. They have found home, unfortunately, in northern Nigeria. So those are the JNIM that Christian mentioned. You've got our homegrown terrorists, domestic terrorists who are Boko Haram. All of this, you know, I mean, I remember once interviewing Dr. Kabiru Adamu, and Dr. Kabiru Adamu, who is one of our experts, not just in Nigeria, not just across north of Nigeria, African terrorism security experts. He said to me, we have 80 anti-state terror groups active in Nigeria. Those are some of the facts that are rarely ever reported. As journalists also, we have a lot of lazy journalism going on. We have a lot of regurgitation of, you know, emotive responses rather than factual responses. Because in order to do factual responses, you need to actually have a passion about reporting what is happening, the way it is happening, and actually removing yourself, indeed, removing your ethnicity from it and coming from a place of objective journalism. So it's very, very hard. So one of the things that I did, if I may say, friends, as a journalist, is that rather than make a commentary, which a lot of my colleagues tend to try to do, is to hold 2 town halls, you know, part 1 and part 2, and invite 4 different experts who are speaking from 4 different angles of the actual issue. Those are the things that educate the public. What the responsibility we have is not just to report what is happening, but to also educate the public as to what is happening, how it's happening, why it's happening, and the fact that it didn't start today, whilst not making an excuse for government.
Okay, Dr. Annie, let's come back to you. Are we seeing maybe signs of collaboration between armed bandits, extremist groups, and maybe even trafficking networks? What should we be most worried about, in your view?
Yeah, so I think, in my view, we should be really worried about, you know, what is happening in the Sahel, and, you know, how they are moving gradually and then coming into Nigeria. We have, in the Sahel region, we have one of the biggest alliance of Al-Qaeda, which is the JNIM forces, which are operating in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And now, across the coastal countries of West Africa, in Togo, Benin, they have been victims of, you know, the same JNIM alliance group that have merged together since 2017 and are wreaking havoc across the region. Now, you have Boko Haram, which have been in existence for far longer. When we say Boko Haram, we're talking about the Jazz, you know, and then we're also talking about the ISWAP, the Islamic State, you know, that are also operating in the Lake Chad Basin for a very long time. And now the ISWAP is also very, very strong. And then we have been receiving reports that these groups have been speaking to each other, you know, in a disturbing way. And there is a potential that, you know, over time they could find entry points to find either mergers or to cooperate in how they carry out onslaughts, not just in Nigeria, but also across West Africa. So it's something that we must be worried about. You know, that there's no actor, whether it be it in Nigeria or neighboring countries, that will say that, oh, they are immune from this crisis, you know, because if these strongest actors in Sahel and the strongest actor in the Chad Basin do merge and start cooperating, we'll see much more troubling impact. But yes, that broader narrative is there, but let us also see that these groups are actually, you know, very devolved to a large extent. When we are talking about bandits, just as Ireti was talking about, you know, when we're talking about bandit groups, we're talking about various groups that are decentralized, you know. You actually cannot go to a particular place to say, okay, we're going to get a particular bandit. You know, it's just a general term that have been used now to classify any actor that is being led by an individual or a few group of persons operating within specific area. So that decentralization and, that how they're able to adjust immediately in various environments that they are, it's a big threat for the nation, not just for the nation, not just for the northern part of Nigeria, but across the southern area. And it also teaching a lot of lessons for other regions on how, banditries can succeed. You have few men in motorcycles operating across, a specific region, and they can easily devolve, merge into society and with communities, and over time congregate again when they do need to carry attacks. So this is a classic issues that we're having in Nigeria, not just in Nigeria, but just looking at the West Africa perspective. And these issues, when we're talking about terrorists and bandits groups, or they share scripts. They know how to operate, and these things could over time, become realities, not just of Nigeria, but of other areas as well.
All right, Dr. Ogudoro. I mean, I can only imagine the trauma that these children experience as a result of these abductions. Are we seeing real potential for a deep psychological damage of a long-term nature?
Yeah, definitely. The damage that we're experiencing as it applies to these young children is not likely to be something that we'll be able to resolve anytime soon, especially in a country where we don't even have the manpower to be able to address the challenges associated with what these children are going through. In the whole of the country called Nigeria, to the best of my knowledge, we don't have more than about 300 psychiatrists, and our universities haven't worked very hard yet to be able to produce enough social workers, psychologists, and counselors who can work in these schools when the children do return, to be able to help them to recover from the trauma that definitely the abduction would have occasioned. And it's not just the children, even their parents are going through a lot. These are unanticipated challenges that have come. And even their distant relatives, everyone seems to be affected one way or the other. So it's not just the immediate families that are traumatized. I tell you, even other children who are watching this on television, and parents who have for some time left their children in boarding houses across the country. I tell you, boarding houses have become very blackmailed now. So you find that parents are no longer interested in keeping their children in boarding houses, and whatever may be the benefits that are associated with training children in boarding houses will become benefits that will evaporate, with these challenges if we allow them to continue. So this is very problematic for us. I find it very unfortunate. Our teachers too are becoming very unwilling to operate in classrooms in the northern part of the country, even as close as Abuja, and with all the paraphernalia of security apparatus that we have in Abuja, it's becoming also an endangered place, because it's now obvious that these guys have penetrated those places. Kwara is not very far away from Abuja. Kogi is not very far away from Abuja. And it's very obvious that all of these people are now beginning to operate in this place. And we know that a lot of it is associated with materialism. These people are just looking for money. And they know that when you pick up children in large numbers, then you have that becomes a kind of bargaining chip. So it becomes very easy for you to be able to extract a lot of money from the coffers of government. And that's exactly what they're targeting. So it's not just about terrorism, it's also about a means to get money out of government hands and out of the hands of parents, so that they can now plug that money into probably other motives they are pursuing. And we must, as a people, as a society, and as a government, rise up right now and tackle the matter.
Ms. Bakari Yusuf, I'm wondering about the media now itself and its coverage. Do you think that it forces accountability, or does it sometimes produce shock more than solutions?
Great question. So, like every other part of the world, traditional media, independent media, is now having to battle with social media. So social media, which tends to produce sensationalism, videos without context, some are even rehashing old videos that have nothing. In fact, there have been videos that happened in other parts of West Africa, which are bandied about, and it is said, oh, this is what's happening in Nigeria. This is what's happening in the north. So that makes it very, very difficult. I have to say that, I keep going on. I say to people in Nigeria, indeed in Africa, journalism must always be about education. Education, 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 and awareness. It must always be about empowering the populace with, history, truth, awareness, so that the panic is lessened. Because when you have a robust understanding of how we got here, why we are here, and what is going on exactly, then you tend to kind of manage things better. Dr. Peter mentioned about the trauma. Indeed, when are we going to start talking about the trauma? We stopped talking about the trauma that happened to the Chibok girls, to the Dapchi girls. In fact, there's another trauma. There's the fact that there were times when boys were kidnapped and they didn't make, the national news. So like you started yourself, often, it's often girls. Well, there are times when boys are taken. There are lots of boys who are taken and they become members of these same terror groups that we're talking about. Because remember, when they take girls, they know that it's extremely emotive. They know that the international community will rise up and speak. When they take boys, it's not as emotive. And those boys become, they get integrated because there's a lot of pressure on boys to actually, bring money home and do all of these things. So the way the community is, all these have to be educated. We indeed must start talking about the trauma, the fact that we don't have enough social workers, like Dr. Peter rightly said, the fact that we don't have enough therapists, the fact that there was a time when we had the likes of Dr. Akilu, or I think Fatima Akilu, I think her name was, who used to work with these boys who were part of Boko Haram, who wanted to repent. What happened to that program? So when as a journalist and as one of the things I do admire, I like what a lot of my colleagues are doing, but I would like, and I think we need to do much, much more. We must always come, especially given the crisis that's in our hands, we must always come from a place of education, non-partisan, and which is what they're doing very well, continue to put pressure on government, because ultimately the responsibility of each and every one of us belongs and stands squarely on the shoulder of our president. And when government is letting us down, we must constantly remind him that he asked for the job by campaigning. He got the job after an election, and therefore he must rise to the occasion. He certainly rose to the occasion when he was doing the easiest job in politics, which was opposition politics. When we had the issue of the Chibok girls, he stood up and he spoke for the people. Well, now it's your turn, Mr. President, and we need you to stand up, not just speak to us, which you haven't done, sir, if I may say so, but actually grab the bulls by the horn. Show us the courage that you use to stand on that podium in I think it was in Abeokuta, and you said, Emi Lokan, it is my turn. That's what you said. You said, it is my turn to be president of Nigeria. Indeed, you've gotten your turn. So where is that battle-ready man? What are you doing? Yes, you're having meetings. Speak to us. Indeed, this is a time that now they talk about kinetic and non-kinetic. This is not the time for non-kinetic approach. Because when you take a non-kinetic approach, at the time when your people, when our children are being kidnapped, indeed our brothers and sisters are being killed, then indeed, sir, you are taking the easy way out. We need you to be brave. We need you to actually act like guerrilla, because you are not dealing with the usual sort of, the rules of war. You are dealing with a guerrilla warfare, and therefore we are in an exceptional situation which requires for you to behave in an exceptional manner. That is the one message I want my colleagues to continue to get out to the government, not just Mr. President, the ministers, the senators, the House of Reps, the local chairman, because each of them were voted for.
Right.
Each of them must know the expectations we have. And it is our job as journalists to actually put this out on behalf of the people. Because this is now about the people's mandate. It's no longer an election, it's about the people. This is about the People's Charter. The People's Charter is, we want to be safe, and we expect you, Mr. President, and everybody that reports to you, and indeed the whole ecosystem of the democracy in Nigeria, to rise up and fight. Stop talking. It is time to fight. And that's what we expect from you.
Let me come back to you, Dr. Annie, then, as we continue this conversation. Some communities say that they've lost faith in the state and its ability to keep them safe, and they've begun forming vigilante groups. I mean, it's a difficult one, but when you feel helpless, this is what will happen. Is this a new danger?
Yeah, so it's across board, even in the capital city in Abuja, you see various security outfits that are manning both estates and various community areas. Then you begin to wonder, where is the police? I live in Abuja itself, but then in some areas I don't see the police. And most of this has also been linked to, what the direction the president took just recently of withdrawing police officers from prominent politicians, who the police officers are just sent there to, guard a very few people, while the masses are left unguarded, and left for their own devices. So I think that is one of the huge gaps that we have, and that has been now leading to forming of these vigilante groups. And, not just here, across, I also like to touch across, what is happening in the Sahel, because, it's also a dynamic that is going on. Various, vigilante groups have been formed, working alongside the security agencies, the former security agencies, but also a lot of them working on their own. The pitfalls of this is, what happens, if we ever get to a situation where we are able to address banditry issues, or at some point these groups realize, oh no, we actually cannot even solve the issue of, the security challenges that we are facing across the country right now. Why? Because, politicians are not making real-time effort in, investing in technology, in drone capacities, in kinetic effort to carry out those attacks that are needed against these violent groups where necessary. And when they do begin to realize this, the vigilante groups will turn on the people they're meant to protect, and then they'll realize that everyone is left for himself in this crisis. So that is the major pitfalls that we're having in terms of having these vigilante groups. And in some cases, the government even don't have a real account of them. The population don't have a database where we can go and check, is this group registered, within the security apparatus that we have in Nigeria or not?
All right, Ms. Bakara Yusuf, as we start to wrap up this conversation, your final thoughts. What can journalists do you think, to help arrest this? is there something more than just writing words on paper?
Yes. Yes, there is. You know, we need to be able to go into the communities, because one of the things that's missing is that there are community members who are part of these terror groups. It's either they've got collaborators or they've got members in there. So we need to be able to go into the communities and talk to people, interview them. We need to also talk to the victims, okay? Because their voices must continue to be loud. One of the things we don't do enough is hear from those who are victims. The other thing is, we mustn't leave any stakeholder out. There is a national debate going on about insecurity in Nigeria. It is not just a debate. It is an existence right now. It is as real as the oxygen we breathe. We wake up every minute to more bad news, albeit we've had 2 or 3 good news where the girls and you know, some of the schools have been rescued. But unless we are ready to have a robust conversation that includes every stakeholder, we will be letting down the populace. Indeed, we will be allowing the likes of Donald Trump, who probably couldn't point to Nigeria on a map, to divide us with his short, narrowed religious rhetoric. We must take our power back. We know this country. Indeed, like Christian said, we know the environment. We know West Africa. We know our neighbors. The other thing is, we're not asking about the Pan-African angle of this. Niger is not talking to Nigeria. Neither is Burkina Faso. Neither is Mali. But we have the same problems. Mr. President, this is the time for you to go make up with your brothers. Because all of this, the moment they came out of the African Union, of ECOWAS, we were left on our own. And we forgot that we're going to be needing each other. Indeed, how does a thief come to your house and your neighbor, and you're not talking to your neighbor, and you expect your neighbor to help you, or you've isolated your neighbor, or indeed, like our president did, you've threatened your neighbor on behalf of foreigners. So all of this needs to be brought into the conversation. We must start having the Pan-African conversation. If it is true that Niger has blocked their borders, can you believe that? Niger has blocked their borders because Donald Trump spoke very foolishly about guns ablazing. Then we're left on our own. How do we then work with Niger? So we need all of these things to come together. We need to bring Macban, Mieti Allah, who is the association for herders. We need to bring them into the conversation as well, because incidentally, nobody's talking to them. So we're letting ourselves down. If we're going to have a real debate and actually look at a solution, focus on a solution, finally, of something that has plagued us for near on 20 years, then everybody's voice must count.
All right. And I want to thank you so much indeed for joining us, Ms. Reti Bakari Yusuf, journalist and broadcaster. And a final thought and word from you, Dr. Ogodoro. If security is failing our children, do we change the education system, perhaps? Perhaps using technology, hybrid learning. Are these realistic solutions, do you think?
Well, we are definitely moving in that direction because we have no alternative given the prevailing circumstances that we're experiencing now. The children are out of classrooms. They have been ordered home by relevant authorities. And we cannot afford to keep them at home without giving them access to opportunities to continue to learn. So technology must come in here. We must, however, realize that Nigeria, most of Africa, remains an environment where poverty continues to ravage. So the average parent who is affected in this situation is a parent who can't afford to keep put digital devices in the hands of all the children that they have, especially in the northern part of the country where fertility rate is very high. So you find that the average couple in the north that we are discussing has on the average about 6 children, and they haven't got the money to even put food on the table is a difficult thing. So we are thinking outside the box as professional educators to be able to work out a way to continue to educate our children despite the challenges that we are facing. And so what we are looking at now is to probably think of assembling these children in the homes of parents who will serve as volunteers, volunteering their rooms and their resources in terms of giving us maybe television sets. And then the teachers can stay in their homes and remotely deliver learning materials via technology. Zoom is there, the kind of platform we're using. Microsoft Teams is here, and several other tools that we can use now, Google Meet, etc. So one teacher should be able to talk to thousands of children across the country, and we won't be able to ensure that every child stays in his or her own home to get the signals from the teachers. But what we are looking at is the possibility of putting these children in pockets of 50s, where parents have the facilities to accommodate them, and then the individual teachers will be able to make broadcasts to these different homes, given the prevailing circumstances. So that's the only way to go. We have no alternative, and the education remaining, the bedrock of development. We can't let it suffer.
Dr. Peter Ogodoro, education analyst, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the program. And Dr. Christian Annie, security analyst, also thank you so much indeed for your thoughts. And of course, we said thank you to Ms. Ereti Bakari Yusuf, a journalist and broadcaster, also sharing your thoughts on this very, very important conversation. To all of you, my thanks to you.
Our pleasure being on the show.
Yeah.
And that's how we come to the end of today's edition of Channel Africa Conversations. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, well, I'd love to hear from you. On your screen now, you'll see our email address and contact details, our social media pages. Please use them to share your thoughts with us about what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and the kind of conversations you'd like us to have in the future, and with whom. I look forward to hearing from you. In the meantime, from me and the team, goodbye.